Students are struggling with programming because they are trying to learn the syntax, learn the memorizing the code and copy pasting from different sources like ChatGPT, Gemini, etc. And they have a fear of error. When the compiler gives error, the student feels stuck and they think that it is a big problem which cannot be solved. That is why the students are struggling with programming. But as I said, programming is not about the syntax, and the modern languages that we are having, like Python, have a very simple syntax. And if you have a hold over the object oriented programming, you can understand the syntax in a very easy manner. So, programming is all about problem solving. That is why the aptitude of the student is more important than the language. So, computer follows clear instructions, and we have to break the big problems into smaller steps, smaller algorithms, smaller functions, and we have to think logically before coding. Like I discussed in the previous video, that making tea, we have to give the complete algorithm that boil the water, add various ingredients, and then the tea will be ready. Now, a 5 step framework to think like a programmer. First of all, you have to understand the problem, solve the problem manually, break it into steps, dry run, and then check the edge cases. Now, understanding the problem is about identifying what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what are the constraints that control the input or the output. You don't start coding immediately. You have to plan how the input is getting converted into the output. First, you solve it manually, and then you think or note down the steps that you have taken, and then you convert those steps into an algorithm. So we break the steps into smaller parts, like what kind of a data, how to initialize the variables, how to loop through the data, how to compare values, how to update the results. Then, whatever logic you have written, whatever algorithm you have formed, you run it with dry run. We will not convert it into a program straight away. You work through each variable in the code and you run that on a piece of paper, that how the output is going to change, how the behavior of all variables is going to change. Then you have to think about the edge cases, like if the user will enter a negative number, if a user will enter a character in place of an integer or a float in place of an integer, or it will give a very extreme value which is outside the bounds of the computer. So you have to think of all the edge cases and handle those edge cases. If you think in this direction, you will write a very good program. Instead of memorizing, you have to follow pattern recognition, abstraction, logical structuring, and problem decomposition. The final message is that programming is trained thinking. It is not an inborn talent. Anybody can be trained into a good programmer. I hope this video is helpful to you and this message reaches you, that anybody can become a good programmer with practice.